It's March, which means it's basketball. Sweet 16 is about to crank up on both the men's side, the women's side. A couple of upsets, a lot of chalk. Some really cool storylines. Not many blue bloods lingering around, at least on the men's side of this NCAA tournament. No Kansas, no Kentucky, no North Carolina. And speaking of North Carolina, well, the biggest story probably in all of sports right now, other than opening day, and I'll say it's even bigger than that, is this coaching change at North Carolina. Hubert Davis out after 5 years of the Tar Heels. Now the question is, who's up? Who's going to be the next head coach of the Tar Heels? And not many people have had that job. More people this century have had the job than had it all of last century. It's really fascinating. There was a period of time, a stretch, where North Carolina had two coaches, Frank McGuire and Dean Smith. For decades, 45 years, that was the case. And then Dean stepped down, Coach Smith stepped down in 1997. Bill Guthridge, longtime assistant, been there for 30 years as an assistant. He took over, coached them for 3 years, took them to a couple of Final Fours, and then sailed off into the sunset. Now, he was 60 when he took over. He was 60 years old when he took over in 1997. They bring Matt Doherty home, former player for the Tar Heels. He was on the 1982 national title team. They bring him home. He's at Notre Dame. I think he's like 30 years old. Yeah, he's 30 years old at the time. Comes out like gangbusters, then fizzles. And the prodigal son, Roy Williams, leaves Kansas and comes back and wins 3 championships. Everybody knows the story. Roy stepped away 5 years ago. Hubert Davis elevated, went to a Final Four, or went to the national championship game, actually, but hasn't been great since. And the lasting images we have of Hubert Davis are, A, North Carolina blowing that 19-point lead against Virginia Commonwealth in the opening round of the tournament this year, and that just really awkward, uncomfortable post-game media conference. I've never seen anything quite like it, and I'm not alone in saying that, and now it's done. They let it linger for about 4 days before they made a change, they being the powers that be at North Carolina, but they did it. And they sent out this, and this is really says a lot about the state of college athletics in 2026, how they're merging with communications. They issue a podcast, or put together a podcast, and they put it on social media on Wednesday morning. And it was really, really interesting. And there is Steve Newmark he is the incoming athletic director, and he's joined by Bubba Cunningham, the longtime athletic director, who's wrapping things up in a couple of months. Here's what they say with regards to the coaching change in the new search.
For us to do right by the Carolina family, we have to make sure we get the best candidate possible, the one who can lead us for years to come and have us competing for national championships on an annual basis. So when we look at that, if you look at our incredible history and legacy of coaches here, almost all of them were great teachers. They were great strategists. They were great leaders. And so we really will try to ensure that whoever comes in and sits in this seat embodies all of those characteristics, and importantly, that they have a respect for tradition. And, part of our tradition is having coaches who are innovators and build great cultures. And then at the end, we also need to recognize that the landscape continues to change in collegiate athletics. And so we need to have somebody who is adept and understands that and will be able to navigate that going forward.
Tradition and culture. Those are the words that he kept using. Again, that was Steve Newmark, the incoming athletic director at the University of North Carolina. Who's next isn't really that big of a deal, I guess. I mean, it is a big deal, but that's not the major story here. And we see different names about who's next. Is it Billy Donovan? Is he going to leave the Bulls? I saw a list with Nate Oates on it. Nate Oates ain't getting a phone call. Alabama's coach is not getting a phone call. He's got the whole deal with Charles Bediako, where he's trying to bring this guy back from the G League, and under the auspice of getting his degree. No. This whole deal with having a player get arrested for a couple pounds of pot, that ain't happening. And oh, by the way, having a player in the NBA who might be going to prison for murder. No, Nate Oates Nate Oates is not getting a phone call. Todd Golden is not getting a phone call. The Carolina people are still, well, they still have a certain standard that they, a little aloofness about them. Pompous, pious might be the word, but either way, those guys aren't getting phone calls. Billy Donovan, I can see getting a phone call. Dusty May at Michigan, maybe getting a phone call. I could see that. But that's not the story here. The story is that the removal of Hubert Davis as head coach after 5 years, I think it was all part of a plan. It was inevitable to a certain degree. I can't say that 5 years ago when he was elevated to be the head coach, they said it's only going to be a 5-year run, then we're going to remove him. No. I can't say for certain that it would have happened if they'd had a long NCAA tournament run. I can't say it. Maybe they would have made a coaching change next year or the year prior. The next time he stubbed his toe, there would have been a change. That's a fact. And I'll go back to the VCU game was the easy out. Not having superstar Caleb Wilson isn't why they blew a 19-point lead. They had a 19-point lead. They blew it because of a myriad errors on Hubert's part. Let's call it what it is. And it doesn't make him a bad guy. He's a Tar Heel guy, good human being, overwhelmed by the job. They're going to go big game hunting to bring in the next head coach. Mark my words on that. But that person will be from outside the family. And that's key. That's key here. Because in order to achieve what North Carolina needs to achieve, they're going to have to step away from this Dean Smith coaching tree. They're going to have to step away and get somebody that does not have a North Carolina pedigree. Not by choice, but because they have to. That person that they need right now doesn't exist with a North Carolina degree or background or what have you. And what all this signals, and this is a long-winded way of getting to my point for this episode, what all this signals is that North Carolina is at a crossroads, and what we are witnessing is the modernization of its athletic department and its modus operandi, how it goes about its business. This is more than just a coaching change. This is something bigger. It's dragging this athletic department into the 21st century and saying, you have tradition, you have history, that's all fine and dandy, but you got to figure out how to make a lot of money. That's the only way you're going to remain competitive, remain relevant in this day and age. And therefore, they've had to make a coaching change. Bringing in Steve Newmark as the athletic director. That's a big signal of that. Steve Newmark, and I wrote a column about it. This is the direction a lot of universities are going in. They're bringing in or hiring people to run athletic departments who aren't traditional administrators, former coaches, what have you, folks who came up the ranks to become the athletic director. They're going in a different direction. They're going to people with experience in professional sports. They're going to people with experience in entertainment. I think of Jeremiah Donati, the athletic director at South Carolina. He's just started his second year, I guess, or about to begin his second full year as the athletic director. His background, he was the AD at TCU, but before that, he was a lawyer and a sports agent. He worked for super agent Lee Steinberg, for goodness sakes. So he understands how to look and get various revenue streams to bring in additional ways to bring in money. Steve Newmark, the incoming athletic director at North Carolina, same vein. He was president of Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing, RFK Racing, in NASCAR. He was one of those guys who really spearheaded the push for NASCAR to have its charter system, to institute its charter system in 2016. And basically what that did is allowed teams to operate as independent or as franchises, professional sports franchises, beneath the NASCAR umbrella. It's kind of like the way the Yankees are in Major League Baseball, the Celtics on the NBA, so on and so forth. That's his job. That's his primary job. And they even said as much, they being North Carolina, the university, when he was hired, that his immediate goal and his long-term goal was revenue growth. Explore ways to have revenue growth. It's the only way you can compete, the only way you remain relevant in athletics these days. A sad whole card truth. Big bucks get, big results. Brett Yormark, the commissioner of the Big 12, that's his background. He worked for Jay-Z, okay? He was part of things in the NBA, sports and entertainment. He gets it. He gets it, and that's why the Big 12 survived that last round of realignment, because they had a guy like Brett Yormark, outside the box thinking. figuring out ways to leverage this asset to make up for not having that asset. Just really, he's done a really good job. Criticize it or not, he's done a really good job. That's what Steve Newmark's going to be doing, figuring out ways to bring in revenue for the University of North Carolina. And he's got some work ahead of him. Now, one of the things that he's going to have to navigate is this whole deal with the Dean Dome. Civil war going on. Do they keep the Dean Dome? It's center of campus. It's center campus, 40-year-old facility. Antiquated, outdated for sure. It's going to cost, and I'm looking at my notes now, it's going to cost between $590 and $600 million to renovate the Smith Center. Now, what that will do is add luxury suites and so forth, and they'll get, and they, being the University of North Carolina Athletic Department, will get an additional $3 to $4 million in revenue a year. That's good, right? Well, what's on the table right now is this other development on a property outside of campus, and they're calling it Carolina North, and it would be a multi-purpose facility which would have a basketball arena, but it would also have hospitality, retail, you name it. And it'll cost more. I'm looking at the price now. It'll cost $786 million. That's a large chunk of change, more than to renovate the Smith Center, but it will bring in $26.5 million annually. That's a lot of cash. And here's the big number. 5 to 6 billion with a B, economic impact on the state of North Carolina. Wow. And think about Chapel Hill, how it would benefit, the county, that area, that part of the triangle, how it would benefit from having something like that. Seems like a no-brainer, right? Well, no. We're talking about a school that leans on its tradition almost to a fault. A school that is so devoted to these ideals called the Carolina Way that it might be sacrificing beaucoup dollars in order to keep doing it, to worshiping at this altar. They keep talking about how Coach Smith wanted the Dean Smith Center, the arena, basketball arena, whatever it be named, to always be on campus. And I get it. But Coach Smith's been dead for a decade. Coach Smith never had to deal with NIL and the transfer portal and all that. Coach Smith never had to worry about revenue sharing. They're getting in their own way. But I think having a guy like Steve Newmark on board is going to help nudge things in the right direction. I think it's paramount that North Carolina breaks away from its wine and cheese mode of thinking, definitely its reputation, and becomes something more robust, something more modern, for lack of a better word. You can have your tradition, you can have your history, you can celebrate the crap out of it, but you can't let it dictate what you do going forward. And that means, unfortunately, having to snap off this coaching tree with Dean Smith. The next guy's not there. And it only exacerbates things when you look 8 miles down the road and you see how the coaching change works so marvelously at Duke, from Krzyzewski to John Shire, for any number of reasons. Different situation, not apples to apples. Cameron Indoor Stadium's not going anywhere. Duke's a private university. We could break that down in another episode, how the differences in the machinations of the athletic departments of those two places. As far as North Carolina being a public entity and where it's at, it's going to have to come into the 21st century and be modernized. This is my take on it. And I think it's bigger than Hubert being fired. I think it's bigger than someone else coming in and setting off a domino effect like perhaps we've never seen in college athletics. I think that's what we need to be paying attention to here, because it's something that's going to happen inevitably, if it's not already, at universities all across the country. How can they modernize their athletic departments to bring in more revenue, to look almost, again, like professionals, to emulate the professional model? Kentucky is one I have on top of my head, where it's created a for-profit entity as part of its athletic department, or maybe its whole athletic department. I'll have to do my research a little deeper on that. I'm sorry, but I think that's how it is. It's a lot to ponder. It's a lot to consider. I've got Pat Forde, the esteemed columnist at Sports Illustrated, coming aboard in just a moment. I'm going to get to his take on this. I'm going to ask Pat, am I thinking correctly that the big story here isn't just a coaching change at what some say is the best job in America, I would argue that. But it's something deeper, something broader that represents maybe what's going on across college athletics in general. Pat Forde at Sports Illustrated. He's joining us on the other side. Stick around.
Sports fans, it's time to gear up. Head to fanstreamsports.com and check out our brand new merchandise store. We're talking bold t-shirts, 3/4 zips, hoodies, hats, mugs, and more. Everything you need to rep your favorite shows and your favorite crew. Whether you're rolling with the JP Peterson Show in Tampa Bay, From the Rough in Dallas, the Tim May Show featuring Clay Hall, or the Jeff Thidoff Show in Ohio, or any of our FanStream Sports original programming, we've got the perfect look for game day and every day. So don't wait. fanstreamsports.com. Click merch and grab your gear now. Wear the stream, live the stream, fanstreamsports.com.
Let's go.
Right now, back to the show on FanStream Sports.
And the big news, obviously the NCAA tournament, Sweet 16, about to crank up, but the dominant narrative right now, the dominant story is the coaching change at North Carolina. It's going to be seismic. The domino effect's going to be out of this world. We thought it was big. We thought it was big when Matt Doherty got hired. And I've referenced the excellent story in Sports Illustrated from then outlining how guys all the way down to junior high were impacted. This one will be bigger. But what people aren't talking about is what this says about bigger issues. One, the state of college athletics in general, what this move signals. And two, the modernization of North Carolina's athletic department. That's what I think it means. We're going to see if my guest agrees. He's the esteemed columnist for Sports Illustrated. It's Pat Forde. Pat, welcome aboard. Am I on the right train of thought, brother?
Yeah, good to be on with you, Scott. And yes, I agree. I mean, I think that this is kind of what's going on at North Carolina is a little bit of a microcosm of what's going on everywhere, where there's a little bit of a fight for the soul of Carolina in terms of how much they feel compelled to modernize versus how much they want to hold on to what made North Carolina, especially North Carolina basketball, special. And the coaching change is certainly part of it. And this is probably almost assuredly going to be the first time they've hired outside of the Dean Smith family since Dean started in 1961. So 65 straight years of Dean Smith and then somebody who played or coached under him. That's going to end. And then also this intersects with a fight over the arena, the Dean Dome, the Dean Smith Center, which is outdated. And there are a lot of people who want to build a new arena off campus, about 3.5 miles away. And given the tradition that's associated with the Dean Dome, it's another example of where Carolina is kind of caught in this tension point of, how much do we go forward because we need a lot of money versus how much do we hold on to what we cherish here. And this is the point where I think a lot of schools are at the same or similar crossroads of saying, yeah, I can sympathize. We're doing the same thing on our campus.
How does UNC come out on the other side of this, straddling both worlds? On the one hand, honoring that past and acknowledging the Tar Heel brand and the Carolina way and all that, but at the same time, remaining solvent, I guess, for lack of a better way to frame it, because it's all about the money now, and that's literally what Steve Newmark has been brought on to do. He's the new athletic director starting in a couple of months to create new revenue streams, and that's happening all across sports. How does North Carolina straddle both lanes, its history and being innovative and profitable?
Great question. I don't know. I don't think you probably successfully straddle them. You have to go harder one side or the other. And frankly, in the current climate, you always go harder on the side of what generates revenue. So I would anticipate they will build a new building. You mentioned that's the third element here that I didn't mention is that Bubba Cunningham, longtime athletic director and a campus administration lifer, is on the way out, and a guy from NASCAR is on the way in to raise more money. So, that's the other part of the tension points there. And you are seeing that at athletic departments all over the place. Old school ADs are on the way out. New school guys whose backgrounds are involved in how do we maximize revenue are on the way in. So if you're Carolina, I don't know, other than I have a feeling they will build a new arena. And they'll do what they can to make it look like a shrine to old Carolina. but it won't be Old Carolina. Now, that stuff happens with arenas all over the country. And there are a lot of people in North Carolina who were just horrified when they left Carmichael Hall and went into the Dean Dome in 1986. So, that evolution is almost inevitable. But moving it off campus is the part that I think hits a lot of people, because the Dean Dome is really part of the heart of campus there. And so you take that out.
It's the
center. Now you're going to, bus students 3.5 miles or whatever to go to the games. And it's just, it's going to be different. It's going to be antiseptic almost no matter what they do, no matter what they try. But it's probably going to happen.
And the heart of it, really quickly though, it's not like kids having to bus 45 minutes to get to the Rose Bowl to watch UCLA. It's 3.5 miles.
Yeah.
But the dollars tilt in favor of not only the university, but in the entire community and the state. And I'm looking at the numbers now, Pat. $5 to $6 billion economic impact over the next 10 years for the state of North Carolina. $26.5 million in annual revenue. Wow. And that's money that they will have to flip back into the athletic department for the revenue sharing and this, that, and the other. It's just, I don't see any other way. But I think what they're having a hard time letting go of, and that's at the crux of all this, Coach Smith, God bless his soul, wanted to stay on campus. And in all the messaging you see from Roy Williams and people like that, they lean on Dean Smith. But it's coming to the point now where they've got to say, well, Dean died 11 years ago. He ain't dealing with NIL. He ain't dealing with the house settlement. We need to find our own path.
That's right. And that's the thing. And that's, again, why this is such a ticklish subject. I mean, I don't think there is any college basketball coach as revered. Maybe Mike Krzyzewski at Duke, but by the university for what he did as Dean Smith at North Carolina. Even Kansas has had a number of great coaches. Kentucky's had a number of great coaches. Indiana had Bob Knight. He would probably be in that, but Bob Knight kind of ruined his own legacy. The Dean Smith legacy is completely unsullied and has continued. And Roy Williams has been the keeper of the flame. He's the biggest acolyte Dean Smith ever had, and he makes sure that he's the keeper of the flame. And so you're fighting against that. A guy who won 3 championships says, no, we need to honor the guy that won 2 championships no matter what. And so you've got a lot of clout there saying we need to honor our past. But as you pointed out, the dollars are going to be overwhelming. And, most of the figures, I think, of what it would cost to try to renovate the Dean Dome, to put in luxury suites just to get the electrical up to staff, and all the other things would be about half as much as it would cost to build a new place that would bring in scads more money. So I think that's kind of, that's going to, at the end of the day, that's going to rule things. And everybody, says, my God, this NIL has done this. And yeah, but NIL had to happen, right? Revenue sharing had to happen. College sports could not have continued without cutting the players in. The court said as much. The Supreme Court kicked the ass of the NCAA in a 9-0 decision and said that your way of business is illegal. And so this had to happen. You can blame NIL, you can dislike it, but it was inevitable.
I will scream on the highest mountain that at least when it comes to college basketball, NIL and the transfer portal is the best things to happen since shot clock. I think it's actually improved the product. This is my last thought, Pat, and I want to get your reaction to this. And this is something that I've said over the last few days, but then I had an epiphany this morning, and it all ties in to this modernization of the athletic department. For decades, UNC has been a proactive program. And I think specifically of Dean Smith, and not just all of his innovations and the impact he had on the game, 4 corners and this and that, but how he was so proactive in social matters. I think about integration and all the wonderful things he did in that arena. But for the last half decade or longer, it has been reactive. And I think about, they didn't get a general manager until last year, after a lot of teams were already operating in this space. I think this is a way for North Carolina to almost play catch up and start reinventing itself and getting away from the wine and cheese crowd into something more robust and more diverse. What's your take?
Sure. No, I agree with you. And you know what? I think it is, look, change is hard. And it is a rip off the Band-Aid sort of time where you got to do it, I think, and dive into it and then come out. Yeah, in a pretty different place on the other end of it. And you will have not just caught up, but probably go past plenty of people. And Carolina will get back to being on the cutting edge. But again, not easy, and especially in a place where you go and sit in the lower bowl of the Dean Dome. There's a lot of fans that have been there a long time, and they don't want the change. So you're going to have to break some eggs to make the new omelet and deal with some of the fallout and the outcry. But that's, I think, inevitable, and that's where they're headed.
He's Pat Forde on the road, man. We're getting the hotel shot. It's big time when the guy posts up in the hotel room to do the Quickie podcast. That's big time, brother. Hey, real quick, what is your next column? You already got it plotted out, or is it going to be reactionary to this? What do we got?
I wrote about Hubert and the Dean Smith family last night. I've got some things in mind for who should be next, but if there's Will Wade to LSU rumors going around, then I think that's where you just say, stop everything. I'm going that direction.
Woo! Hey, and the portal opens April 7th.
Yeah, I know.
Got to have a plan by April 1st, Pat. Got to have a plan by April 1st. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you, Scott. Good to be on with you.
All right, it's Pat Forde. Stick around. We'll be right back. Wrap things up. Good as Pat. He's joining us from the hotel room. He's in California, traveling around doing his stuff for SI, but he's also monitoring these situations that at Chapel Hill, you might have a coaching change at NC State. Will Wade might be leaving the Wolfpack after 1 year to go back to LSU. Matt McMahon, his job's in jeopardy. It's just craziness. And there's going to be just a giant wave coming after UNC hires its next coach. And it's going to go, and it's going to impact head coaches. It's going to impact assistant coaches. It's going to be something. It's going to be something. It's going to be a lot to keep up with. But I'm glad Pat agrees with me, though. It validates what I've been thinking, that this is something bigger. This is not just Hubert Davis being fired. That's a big story. Make no mistake about it. It's a big story, especially considering his background and everything and the way it all fizzled. But the thing to really absorb from it is that this is North Carolina saying, you know what? We've sat on our hands. We've leaned on our history. We've leaned on our tradition. We can't do it anymore. We just can't do it. We've got to be, again, a proactive place. And that's what they're doing. And I would say it goes back to actually the hiring of Steve Newmark and the people who decided to make that move when they said, we've got to modernize. We've got to think differently. We cannot keep doing the same old each and every year because you get the same old results, right? We'll see if it pans out. I like the direction, but there are going to be so many people giving pushback. Because change, Pat said it himself, change is hard, man. It's scary. We like what we like. We like what we know. There's comfort in it. But you got to, what was it Pat said? You got to break a few eggs to make a new omelet or something to that effect. They're going to have to do it. They're going to have to snap some eggs. And I have no doubt in my mind that there are ways they can honor the past. I have no doubt in my mind that Coach Smith would sign off on all this. If he was coaching today or just around today, God love his heart, he would look at the landscape of things and he would say, you know what? I'm glad the athletes have power like they've never had. They have leverage, more leverage now than in the history of organized sports. We are going to have to adhere to how things are. That means paying them. That means embracing this, embracing that. And he would make it work. And he would probably agree. Yeah, we got to go off campus. We just need to make sure that the students can get there. And they'll come. University of Kentucky, I know Rupp Arena is right on the edge of campus, but it's not on campus. Sells out every game. They'll come. Before we go, I have a really cool Dean Smith story, though, I need to tell. I was a young journalist in 2002. 2002, it was the 20th anniversary of Michael Jordan's jumper to win the national championship or secure the national championship in 1982. That was Coach Smith's first one as the head coach of the Tar Heels. And at that time, he was retired. Matt Doherty had taken over. And Coach Smith was doing 3 one-on-one interviews a year. That's what I was told. So I called, and I managed to get one. And it turns out Coach Smith had 2 secretaries. He was that big of a deal. And it was set for Valentine's Day. So I show up to the offices, and I have candies for each secretary. Oh, I'm so happy. Thank you for setting this up. Thank you. And I'm sitting in this room, and I've got a photographer with me. And I'm sitting in this room, and I'm waiting. I'm like 28 years old or something. And I'm sitting there, and here comes Coach Smith. And he's got some papers in his hands, and he goes, "Here, thought you might want this." And it's the stat sheet from the 82 team, and he had some notes on it. I'm like, "Oh, man, this is great. I get to keep this." And in journalism, you're not supposed to be a fanboy, but sometimes you're like, that's pretty cool. And I get to keep that. So I was excited. And we get to talk, and we talk, and he pulls out a sheet of plain white copier paper, and he designs the Jordan shot, Michael Jordan's shot from the left side against Georgetown. Oh, man, that's cool. All right. And we keep talking about other matters, and we start discussing the 4 corners, how he came up with the system to work the clock or to, control the ball, rather. So he flips that paper over with the Jordan shot, and he diagrams how he accidentally discovered the 4 corners with Larry Brown at the point guard and all that. And I look at Coach Smith, and I go, can I have that? And he goes, "Well, yeah, no big deal. Didn't mean anything to him. It's scribbling." So I have both those sheets. I have the stat sheet, and I have that sheet in plastic, locked away. That's pretty cool, with a picture of him doing it. The photographer, again, was with me. So anyway, I get a call a week later, and I still had an office phone. And I go in on a Monday, and there's a voicemail. "Scott, Dean Smith, making sure you got everything you got." Okay, great. Calling back, "Yes, sir. Thank you." Story's not running now for like 7 weeks after we met. The following Monday, "Scott, Dean Smith, making sure you got everything you got." He called weekly until the story ran. So it was like 6 straight Mondays I had a voicemail from Coach Smith. Unbelievable. Fast forward 3 years. I think it was 3 years. And I'm at a golf tournament in Wilmington, North Carolina. It was at Landfall. And it's pouring the rain. It was a celebrity tournament. And it's pouring the rain, and I'm driving a golf cart, and I'm flying by the clubhouse, and I'm just wanting to get to my car. And I hear, "Scott." And I turn around, and there's this little figure in the clubhouse door. Bucket hat pulled over his head, hadn't shaved in days. And this person looks at me, and he goes, "Did you get everything you needed?" It's Coach Smith. He remembered. We had met that one time, spent an hour together 3 years prior, and he sees me speeding by on a golf cart in the rain, and he recognized me, and he asked me that same question again. And you hear these stories about his wonderful memory. They're true. I told that story to Matt Doherty, and he loved it. He loved it, and he said, "That's Coach Smith." He was beaming when I told him that. That was a cool story. That was a cool story. And I have to think that if Coach Smith were alive right now, he would feel sadness for Hubert Davis, one of his former players. But he would also approve of the direction things are going in, that in order for North Carolina to, I guess, I hate to say regain a place of prominence, the brand is undeniable, but to maybe maintain, it's a better way, to secure its future, let's say that, he would sign off on this change, the change at athletic director, and probably the change of arena. Just some thoughts to think about. Let me know what you think. Hit the like, subscribe button to this podcast. Comments are below. Feel free to share your thoughts. You can also hit me up directly on social media, Twitter/X at Scott H Sports. The DMs are open. Love to hear from you. Questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, send them to me. If there's a topic in a future episode you'd like me to discuss, feel free to ship it over. If there's a guest you would like me to interview, let me know. I'll do my best to facilitate it and bring them on. But otherwise, until next time, I'm going to try to focus back on actual basketball because we've got a wonderful Sweet 16 on both the men's and women's sides lined up. We got opening day in baseball and the Masters just around the corner. Can't wait. Until next time.